The first thing I noticed was the silence, not the kind of silence you get in the woods or a dead-end highway. This was something deeper, a silence that felt deliberate, like the world had turned off the sound to warn us not to be there. Even the wind seemed to hesitate as we crossed the rusted, road-closed sign, hanging like a broken limb over the gravel trail. "Still think this is a good idea?" Mark asked, his voice tight with the kind of nervous energy he usually saved for haunted house dares or urban legends. "Too late now," I muttered, checking the coordinates again. GPS flickered for a moment, then went blank. "We're close." The town was called McCaim. At least, that's what we pieced together from a blog post that had since been deleted. No Wikipedia entry, no Google hits. Just one blurry photo of a weather-beaten welcome sign surrounded by pine trees, posted years ago by someone claiming they found it by accident during a hike and regretted ever stepping foot there. That was enough to hook us. Urban explorers with a taste for the forbidden, we'd done abandoned hospitals, ghost trains, Cold War bunkers. But this felt different. A town no one remembers, yet somehow still exists. Yeah, we had to see it for ourselves. We were three, me, Mark, and Jules. Jules had that high-strung look of someone who didn't want to be here, but couldn't bear to be left out either. She carried the camera, always filming, even when she claimed she didn't believe in any of it. That's how we caught most of our weirdest finds. She filmed the truth, whether she believed it or not. About 2 miles down the forgotten trail, the trees broke like a curtain being pulled back, and there it was. McCaim. It didn't look ruined, not in the traditional sense. No vines strangling houses, no graffiti-covered buildings or shattered windows. In fact, it looked untouched. Still, like someone had left for lunch and never came back. "I don't like this," Jules said, camera panning across the empty streets. "Why does everything look so new?" She was right. The buildings weren't collapsing. A diner had a red and white sign that looked recently painted. A barber shop had scissors etched in the glass that hadn't been cracked or fogged. A faded banner flapped outside the community center, still clinging to its rusted hooks. "Welcome to McCaim's Fall Festival, October 17th. No year listed. It's like it was abandoned last week," Mark whispered. "No birds." "No bugs," I said. "No animals at all." We walked the main strip. Some shops were locked, others swung open with a creak. Inside, time seemed to have paused mid-sentence. A coffee cup sat half full on a booth table. An old jukebox hummed softly, lights still blinking though no music played. When Jules zoomed in on a family photo behind the counter, she swore the faces looked blurred, like they had been smudged out. Then we found the movie theater. Or more accurately, it found us. Because the marquee hadn't been updated in decades, or so we thought, the black letters spelled out something we didn't recognize. "Coming soon, The Pestilence, rated R." "I've never heard of that film," Mark muttered. "Could be indie," Jules offered, filming it. "Or maybe it never released." Inside, the seats were covered in thin dust, but the snack bar had a recently popped bag of popcorn resting on the counter. It was still warm. That was the moment we realized we weren't alone here. A flicker of movement at the top of the theater steps. Just a shadow. But it was enough to send us bolting outside again, gasping in the fresh air that suddenly didn't feel fresh at all. "We need to get back to the car," Jules said. Mark was already shaking his head. "Number, we're here. Let's hit the community center, take what footage we need, and leave. 1 more hour." I didn't argue. I should have. The community center was the only building with visible damage. The glass double doors were cracked, one hanging half off the hinge. The air inside was colder, stale and dry, carrying the unmistakable scent of decay. We stepped inside. Rows of metal folding chairs sat facing a projector screen. Dust hung in the air like mist. Papers littered the floor, evacuation orders, emergency procedures, hand-drawn maps. On one of the walls, someone had spray-painted in red, "Do not stay past nightfall." "What the hell happened here?" I asked, picking up a leaflet. Jules scanned one of the posters. These were printed in 2047. We all froze. "That can't be right," Mark said. "This place has been abandoned for years." Jules turned the camera toward the far corner of the room and let out a sharp gasp. I turned to look and saw them. 3 skeletons slumped against the wall. One still wore a sheriff's badge. Another clutched a notebook in its curled, bony fingers. The third had something scrawled on its ribcage in black marker. "McCain lives again." We didn't speak. We just ran. Out the center, down the street, back through the trail that led us there. But when we reached the road, the car was gone, and the trees behind us, silent again, waiting. "I parked it right here," Mark said, spinning in place as if the car might reappear if he looked hard enough. "I locked it. I know I did." There was nothing, just cracked asphalt buried under years of pine needles and moss. Tire tracks, faint and half erased by time, curved into the tree line before vanishing. The sun hung lower now, casting shadows across the trees that looked longer than they should have been. "We walked down that trail 20 minutes ago," Jules said, eyes darting to the surrounding woods. "You saw the sign. You saw the road." "There's no road," I said quietly. She turned to me, camera shaking in her hands. "What?" I pointed. The trail we'd used to enter the town, the one marked by the sagging "road closed" sign, was gone. Where it had been was now dense, unbroken forest. Thick pines stood shoulder to shoulder like guards. "That's not possible," Mark muttered. That can't just disappear." "It didn't disappear," I said. "We did." It was a stupid thing to say, but as soon as I said it, I felt the weight of truth in it. This wasn't just an abandoned town. This place was cut off, tucked between folds of time or reality, or something we couldn't comprehend. We wandered in silence for a while, looping through the town, trying to find anything, that wasn't utterly, impossibly wrong. But the buildings all stared back with dead eyes. No matter which road we took, we always ended up back on Main Street. We passed the diner again, still empty, still clean. Then the church, whitewashed wood, a crooked steeple, and a bell that looked rusted into place. On the front doors, scrawled in charcoal or ash, were the words, "To stay is to forget." "Do you hear that?" Jules asked. We went still, faint, distant, almost like singing, Mark whispered. A child's voice, soft, tuneless, drifting across the town like smoke. We turned in unison, eyes locking onto the direction it came from, the playground behind the school. We followed. The school was a 2-story brick structure, faded but intact. The sign out front still read MCKAME Elementary, though the letters had started to fall off. The playground behind it was a skeleton of twisted swings and a rusting jungle gym, all creaking in the breeze. Except there was no breeze. A single swing swayed gently back and forth. No one was in it. "That's not good," Mark said, voice tight. We approached slowly. The singing had stopped. The air was thick, still, pressing against us. Jules kept the camera up, scanning the yard. Then she pointed. There, etched into the plastic slide, barely visible under the grime, were clawed words, "We never left." I turned back to the swing and froze. Someone was sitting in it now. A girl, no more than 7. Pale, wearing a blue dress that looked like it had been pulled from a thrift store in the 1960s. Her hair hung in matted ropes, and her eyes were completely black. Jules let out a soft, strangled cry. The girl turned her head toward us and smiled. "Wanna play?" she asked. Mark took a step back. "Nope, we're done. We're out." We bolted, again. This time we ran until our legs burned, until our lungs felt like they were collapsing. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of town, the place where the post office sat, half hidden behind ivy and a row of dead trees. We collapsed on the front steps, panting. "We need shelter," I said. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can regroup." Jules opened her backpack and pulled out the camera. It was dead. "It was recording the whole time," she said. "I didn't turn it off." "Battery must have drained," Mark offered, but his voice lacked conviction. I glanced at the post office door. It was ajar. We stepped inside. The place was musty, dark, but not cold. Filing cabinets lined the walls, some still filled with envelopes. Stamps scattered the floor. On the front desk, a stack of undelivered newspapers sat, yellowed and curling. The headline on the top paper caught my eye. New McCain Township to begin construction in 2027. The date? May 15th, 2047, exactly 22 years ahead of us. Same name, Jules said. Same town? Or maybe the next one, I said. Maybe this happens again. Maybe it always happens again. Mark had gone quiet. He stood near the back of the office, staring at the wall. Guys, he said, voice hollow, come look at this. We joined him. Pinned to the back wall was a corkboard. On it, a faded map of McCain and a pinned photograph. It was the three of us, taken that morning, in front of the broken road sign. None of us remembered taking it. Jules backed away. This place knows we're here. Mark pointed to a handwritten note below the photo. 3 entered, 2 never left. We didn't speak for a long time. The air in the room thickened. Lights dimmed without anyone touching a switch. Outside, we heard a single toll from the church bell. It was getting dark, and McCain didn't feel like a town anymore. It felt like a trap. We slept in shifts that night. No one wanted to be the only one awake, but even more terrifying was the idea of being the only one asleep. So we rotated. One person kept watch while the other 2 rested. Though rest was generous, I doubt any of us truly slept. There were sounds all night. Lights scraping across the roof of the post office, the faint whine of metal bending like a swing creaking somewhere far off. At one point during my watch, I swear I saw a figure just beyond the glass door, a silhouette, tall and unmoving. But when I blinked, it was gone. By morning, the world outside the post office was swallowed in fog, thick, grey, suffocating. It rolled in off the woods, burying the trees and buildings in a dense curtain of haze. The sun was a weak smear of white overhead, offering no warmth. We sat in silence for a long while, none of us touching the granola bars we'd packed. Mark stared at the photo of us, still pinned to the wall, his leg bouncing nervously. Jules scrolled through her camera again. The footage from yesterday was still gone. I want to try the community center again, I finally said. There were files in the back, records, something that might explain what happened here. Jules nodded slowly. Better than sitting here waiting for something to find us. We ventured back into town. Everything looked different in the fog. The familiar roads had become mazes, and buildings we'd passed before seemed to shift positions. McCain had always felt strange, but now it was wrong, like the town was rearranging itself when we weren't looking. We reached the community center, its brick exterior now speckled with moss and faint black growths that hadn't been there before. The glass doors yawned open. Inside, the stench of rot hit us hard. The room with the skeletons was undisturbed, their bones slumped against the walls like marionettes with their strings cut. We didn't speak of them. We went deeper this time, past the office, into a side hallway marked archives. The lights flickered when we entered. Filing cabinets stretched along the walls, each labeled with tags like census records, resident logs, and incident reports. We split up, digging through drawers. Jules was the first to find something. Guys, look at this. She held up a small leather-bound book. It wasn't labeled, but inside was a series of hand-scrawled entries in shaky penmanship. May 4th, 2047. They said it started with the pets. Dogs barking at nothing, cats refusing to enter rooms. Then the dreams. Everyone dreaming the same thing. A shadow at the edge of town. A voice calling from the fog. May 9th, 2047. The mayor called an emergency meeting. Half the town showed up in masks, said they couldn't breathe the air anymore. Said the fog was inside their lungs. May 11th, 2047. We tried to leave. Roads went in circles. No matter which way we drove, we ended up back at the post office. Bill Jenkins shot himself after the 3rd loop. May 13th, 2047. It comes at night now. We hear it outside the windows, whispering, scratching. I boarded mine up. I don't sleep anymore. May 15th, 2047. It's here. The rest of the pages were soaked in something dark and crusted. Blood, maybe, or ink. Or worse, Mark backed away from the table, shaking his head. This place died in 2047. But the town we're in, it looks abandoned for decades. So what? This is the future? The past? Neither, I said. Or maybe both. Maybe it's stuck. We left the community center in silence. Outside, the fog had thickened to the point where we couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. As we walked, the town changed again. The diner we passed earlier was boarded up now. The schoolyard was overgrown with thorny vines that hadn't been there yesterday. It was like we were moving through different versions of the same place. Jules stopped cold. Wait, do you guys hear that? We listened. From somewhere distant, deep in the fog, we heard it. A phone ringing. An old-fashioned rotary sound, ringing over and over, echoing through the stillness. We followed it. The sound led us to a small, windowless building we hadn't noticed before. A single flickering light bulb buzzed over the doorway. No sign, no markings. Inside was a lone desk. On it sat a black rotary phone, ringing. Mark stared at it, face pale. This feels like a trap. Everything here is a trap, Jules muttered. The phone kept ringing. I stepped forward and picked it up. A sharp crackle, then a voice. Hello? It sounded like my voice, but not quite. Slower, tired, and terrified. Don't go into the church, the voice said. Then the line went dead. The phone began to melt in my hand. I dropped it, yelling as the plastic bubbled and oozed onto the desk. We backed away, the air suddenly colder. What the hell was that? Mark asked, his eyes wild. My voice, I whispered. That was me. We ran again, bursting into the street, and froze. Where the street should have been was now just empty forest. No buildings, no roads, just trees. We turned around. The building we'd just exited was gone too. All that remained was fog and silence. Then, from behind us, ding! The toll of a church bell, low and heavy, echoed through the air, followed by another, and another, 3 in total. Jules grabbed my arm. We're not alone. Something moved in the fog. The bell tolled again, not from the center of town, but from somewhere far off, buried deep within the fog. A solemn low chime that vibrated through the marrow of our bones. With every echo, the air seemed to get colder, heavier. Why would a church be ringing now? Mark whispered. I didn't have an answer. No one did. But that didn't stop us from following it. We didn't decide to. Not really. It felt like our feet just moved, dragging us forward. The path formed beneath us as we walked, cobblestones revealing themselves one at a time in the swirling mist. The forest retreated in silence, revealing the crumbling silhouette of the old chapel. There was no cross, no stained glass, just a black steeple stabbing the sky like a dagger, the bell above swinging slowly on its own. The front doors were slightly ajar. This is a terrible idea, Jules said, stopping a few feet from the threshold. We need answers, I replied, even as my stomach twisted. Something in there knows what's happening. We pushed open the doors. Inside, the chapel was pitch black. Only the faintest beams of light seeped through cracks in the roof. Wooden pews were splintered and rotting, some overturned as though a panicked congregation had fled mid-sermon. The altar was a slab of stone, blackened and cracked, with something old and dried seeping into its edges. And in the center of the nave stood a single figure. An old man, silent, motionless. He wore a long black coat, buttoned all the way up to his neck. His skin was pale and dry, like ancient parchment. His eyes were cloudy and sunken, but locked directly onto me the moment I entered. 3 wanderers, he said. His voice was a breath, more felt than heard. Drawn by echoes, trapped in the aftermath. Mark instinctively raised his phone, snapping a photo. The screen flickered. Then went black. No photo. The man didn't react. Time here is not a river. It is a loop, a wound, and you have stepped into its infection. I stepped closer, trying to steady my voice. What happened to this town? He didn't blink. They came. From beneath. From the in-between places. Whispered promises. You'll never be alone again. The people listened. Who are they? Jules asked, trembling. He turned to her slowly. Not spirits, not demons. Just watchers, observers. They arrived in the fog and never left. They gave McCain gifts. Time that stood still. Memory without decay. A taste of the eternal. And the cost? I asked. He tilted his head. Reality. Boundaries. The people became echoes. Reflections that didn't know they'd already died. You see their shadows, don't you? The bones. We nodded. Then it's already begun. You're being remembered by the town. That sent a chill down my spine. You mean, it's remembering us? Mark asked. The man stepped aside, revealing a wall behind him covered in old brittle paper. Dozens of photos, newspaper clippings, even drawings, all pinned in a chaotic mass. But at the center were three things that made my heart stop. Our faces. Photos of us. Clear. Crisp. Us standing in the post office. Us outside the diner. Us sleeping. Some were even dated, May 26th, 2047. Today. We never took these, I whispered. You didn't, the man said. They did. Through the eyes of the town, suddenly the chapel groaned. The walls expanded outward like lungs inhaling. The light grew darker. Something beyond the cracked, stained glass began to press against it. A face, or many faces, watching. The man took a step back. You must go. You've lingered too long. Go where? Jules asked, voice rising. To the place where it began. The well. The bell tolled again, this time much closer. A shriek pierced the air, sharp and inhuman, like steel tearing through bone. The chapel shook violently. We bolted. As we crashed through the doors, something huge shifted behind us, a shape descending from the steeple, talons dragging along the walls. I didn't look back. I couldn't. We ran through the fog, the path behind us crumbling. We didn't stop until we found the community park again, though it had changed. The playground was rusted. The trees were leafless and twisted. The sky had gone grey-green, like a storm was brewing with no rain. What the hell was that thing? Mark wheezed. I think it's one of them, I said, the ones the town made a deal with. Did he say, a well? Jules asked, hands on her knees. I nodded. Where it began. We spent the next hour searching. Finally, near the back of the overgrown cemetery, we found it. The well was ancient, bricks cracked and slick with moss. It was sealed with a rusted iron lid bolted down. A single symbol had been carved into the stone, so worn we could barely make it out. It looked like an eye. Or maybe a hole. Mark dropped a rock into it. It didn't make a sound. Sealed for a reason, he muttered. I turned to Jules. What if whatever the town let in came from here? She nodded slowly. And now it's trying to get back out. Then the ground trembled. The lid on the well shifted, just a hair, but enough to screech against the stone. We backed up. And from the woods came a sound we hadn't heard before. Children, laughing. The children's laughter was wrong, not joyful or playful, but echoing, warped. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. The fog above the well spun in a tight spiral, coalescing into something vaguely human-shaped. Limbs too long, torso too narrow. A face formed in the vapor. Hollow eyes, a jagged, open mouth. And then it spoke. You see us now. Mark screamed and stumbled back, tripping over a broken headstone. The mist figure tilted its head and pressed downward, into the well, folding in on itself like paper. Then the air cleared. Stillness returned. But something had changed. The fog no longer pressed against us. It wrapped around us, welcomed us. Jules turned to me, her face pale. I don't think we're just seeing the town anymore, she said. I think the town is seeing through us. I didn't want to believe it, but I felt it too. Memories stirred in my mind, ones that weren't mine. I could feel dirt under my nails, blood in my mouth. I remembered standing in that very cemetery in 2047, handing out masks to children who wouldn't stop coughing. I remembered coughing too, falling. Then darkness, then watching. Jules dropped to her knees. It's inside us now. We have to go, Mark said, now, while we still can. But as we turned to leave, we realized something horrifying. The path was gone. Where the dirt trail once cut through the cemetery was now only weeds and graves. Tombstones where there hadn't been any. Overgrown fences, rusted gates chained shut. We were sealed in. Try the other side, I said, grabbing Mark. Come on, move. We weaved through the cemetery, hands trembling, heartbeats pounding. The air grew colder with each step, and the fog began pulsing, literally pulsing, like a heartbeat synced with something below the earth. We reached the far fence. Mark tried to climb, but the iron bars bent away as if rejecting him. Jules screamed in frustration and threw a rock. It vanished into the mist before it hit the ground. "We're not in the same place anymore," I whispered. Mark turned to me. "What does that mean?" "It means—" I swallowed hard. "I don't think this is McCain anymore." The fog parted slightly, revealing a road that hadn't been there before. An old, cracked asphalt path lined with street lamps that flickered with dying orange light. A green road sign stood just ahead. "Welcome to McCain. St. 2047. "But that's impossible," Jules said. "We were in the ruins. The town's gone." "Not gone," I said, "just waiting." We walked in silence, hearts thudding. The town around us had changed. It wasn't the dead husk we'd seen earlier. This version of McCamey was alive. Streetlights buzzed. Homes stood intact, lights on inside. We passed the diner. It was open. Through the glass we saw shadows sitting at tables. No movement, no faces, just shapes. Mark pushed the door open. The bell above the door jingled. The smell of coffee and meatloaf wafted out. But no one looked at us. The patrons sat still, backs to us, heads slightly tilted, like mannequins frozen mid-conversation. A radio played softly behind the counter. "You are listening to K-MAME, your home for emergency alerts. Please remain indoors. Do not listen to the voices in the fog. Remember, the town is watching." The voice crackled. Repeated. Mark reached for his phone again, still dead. "No time," I said. "We need to find the church again, or something, anything, that'll get us out of here." We ran. Everywhere we turned, the town shifted. The post office was now a flower shop. The elementary school had become a clinic. Nothing was consistent, like the town couldn't remember its own layout. Or worse, it was changing to trap us. Eventually we found the church, except it wasn't a church anymore. Now it was a home. White picket fence, front porch swing creaking in the wind, a mailbox read, "The Hensons." "This is wrong," Jules said, backing away, but the front door opened, and inside stood me, or a version of me. He looked older, pale, smiling too wide, dressed like a dad straight out of a 1950s sitcom. "Come inside," he said. "Dinner's almost ready." My blood ran cold. I shook my head. "You're not me," I whispered. "But I was," he said, still smiling, "when I stopped struggling." He stepped aside, revealing a family inside the house. A woman, 2 children. Their faces were masks, shifting constantly, flickering between features. "We've saved a seat," they all said in unison. Jules grabbed my arm. "Run!" We bolted again. The laughter returned, now higher-pitched, closer. As we fled down the street, we passed another house, and another, in each window one of us. Reflections of who we could have become, or already were, in some timeline, some version. We stopped only when we reached the town square. At the center stood a statue, 3 figures carved from obsidian black stone. It was us. Underneath an inscription, "Makama remembers all who stay." The bell tolled again. There was no wind, but the trees were moving. Every branch twisted slowly, rhythmically, as though the forest surrounding McCain was breathing. In, outside. In, outside. The sound was faint, like paper crumpling in the dark. It pressed against my ears like static. Behind us, the statue of the 3 of us loomed, its obsidian faces carved into blank, unreadable expressions. Mark stared up at it. "Why does it look like us?" he asked, breath hitching. I couldn't answer. None of us could, because deep down we already knew. This town wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was remembering us before we'd even finished living. "We have to destroy it," Jules said suddenly. "Burn it, break it, something. If we destroy the statue, maybe we can break the loop." "It's stone," I muttered. "You can't burn stone." "Then we smash it." Jules grabbed a piece of broken street lamp and swung at the base of the statue. Sparks burst, but the metal bar snapped in half with a metallic twang. The statue didn't even crack, not a scratch. Mark cursed. We're wasting time. We need to find the edge of this place, whatever boundary keeps us here. We ran again. The streets had changed. The diner was gone. So was the cemetery. Even the school was missing. In its place stood buildings we hadn't seen before. Some new, some impossibly old. A Victorian mansion leaned to one side like it had sunk into the asphalt. A 1970s shopping centre blinked with neon lights, flickering between open and closed at random. It's collapsing, I said. The timelines. The town. It's bleeding through its own history. Jules stopped and pointed to the sky. Guys. We looked up. Where the stars should have been, there was only a great black void. A roiling storm of darkness, like a living bruise stretching across the sky. Occasionally it blinked, massive yellow lights opening and closing in slow, deliberate intervals. They weren't stars, they were eyes. The town wasn't just watching us, something above it was, something ancient. We're inside it, I whispered. The town isn't in Arkansas anymore. We're in its memory. Or stomach, or whatever part of a creature a town would get digested in. Mark shook his head. That's insane. You're talking like this is a… McCain was built to feed something, Jules interrupted, her voice thin with fear. We were just supposed to visit. But now it wants to keep us. As if to agree, the ground beneath us shuddered. A groan echoed from the earth and the fog thickened again, except this time it came from below. Cracks spiderwebbed through the pavement, and steam hissed out from the openings. Then we heard them. Footsteps, heavy, synchronized, marching. From behind the courthouse came a procession of figures, dozens, no hundreds, all dressed in mismatched eras of clothing, gas masks, fedoras, wedding dresses, firefighter uniforms. Some wore clothes with logos from years that hadn't happened yet. NASA 2084, Super Bowl 97, UN Division North America. Their skin was pale and flaking, their eyes glassy and wet. But they weren't zombies. They were residents, people who had stayed. And now they walked in perfect unison, hands at their sides, mouths whispering one line over and over, "We are remembered. We are remembered. We are remembered." Jules pulled me behind a rusted van. Mark ducked low and whispered, "What the hell are they?" "Ghosts," I offered. "Not ghosts," Jules said. "Projections. This town keeps versions of everyone who enters. Maybe not alive, but preserved." "They're looking for us," Mark said. "What do we do when they find us?" "I don't think they'll kill us," Jules replied darkly. "I think they'll assimilate us." We waited as the parade passed by, the whispers scratching our eardrums. One of the figures, a man in a 1990s McDonald's uniform, paused. He sniffed the air. "Run," I mouthed. We bolted through the alley, breaking glass underfoot. The buildings leaned in toward us, as if trying to trap us. Doors slammed open and shut. Phones rang from inside darkened homes. Every sound was a lure. We reached the outskirts of town, or what should have been. A single sign stood ahead, half buried in moss. Now leaving McCain. Beyond it was a field of mirrors, hundreds of full-length mirrors, like in a funhouse, but old, many cracked, some stained with fingerprints and blood. They stretched on for what felt like miles. There was no end. We stepped into them. Each mirror reflected a different version of us. In one, Mark was smiling with a wife and child, standing on a sunlit street. In another, Jules was older, face weathered, wearing military fatigues. In mine, I was kneeling in a burned field, covered in ash, hands shaking. They weren't just reflections, they were choices. Every version of ourselves that could have existed if we'd made a single different decision. McCain didn't trap just our bodies, it trapped our paths. Then one mirror shimmered, warped. It showed a version of me slamming a pickaxe into the statue we'd seen earlier. The stone cracked. Darkness spilled out. Screams. "That's it," I whispered. "That's the way out." I pressed my hand to the mirror. It was cold. It pulled. Suddenly, I was inside that version, standing before the statue with the pickaxe already in my hand. Mark and Jules stood beside me, breathing hard, confused but present. Time had folded. We were back at the beginning, but this time we had the tool. "I remember now," Jules said. "This is a loop." But we kept getting stuck before the breaking point. We have to end it here, I said. Smash the statue, break the memory. Mark raised his own pickaxe. Let's do it. We struck together. 1 hit, a crack, 2 hits, a tremble, 3 hits, and the stone shattered. From inside the broken statue came a roar, not of anger, but of release. The fog reeled back like water pulled from a drain. The ground buckled. The mirrors behind us shattered into shards that floated into the sky like fireflies. The sky above blinked, once, then vanished. And then, light. I woke in a pool of morning light. At first, I thought we'd escaped. The town was gone. The nightmare was over. I sat up, half expecting to be back at our car, parked on the edge of that lonely highway in Arkansas. But then I saw the sky. It was cracked. Not like clouds or lightning, literally cracked. Fissures ran through the firmament like shattered glass, and beyond them wasn't blue or black, but a shifting void of purple and red, like the exposed muscle beneath the world's skin. And McCain was still there. But now it was melting. Buildings sagged as if made of wax. The roads crumbled inward, forming swirling sinkholes. The statue, our statue, was gone. Only its base remained, broken and steaming. Mark stumbled to his feet beside me, eyes wide. It's collapsing. Jules nodded, but her face was pale. We broke the loop, but we didn't leave. We're inside the collapse. Somewhere in the distance, the siren blared again, but this time it was warped, slurred, like it had been playing too long on a broken speaker. Wah! We began to move, unsure of where we were going, but certain we couldn't stay. The town breathed again, but it was more labored now, like its lungs were full of sand. Each step we took, the terrain flickered, sometimes asphalt, sometimes dirt, sometimes nothing at all. Then we saw them, figures, but these weren't the eerily preserved residents from before. These were twisted, hollowed-out shells. Their faces were smeared like melting clay. Their mouths hung open in endless screams, eyes bulging, arms twitching. They didn't walk, they jerked toward us, convulsing like marionettes tangled in their own strings. "They're the leftovers," Jules muttered, echoes from loops that never ended. Mark picked up a length of pipe and swung it at the closest one. It exploded into a cloud of dust and static. Another one shrieked, a high-pitched modem-like wail, and charged. We ran, down an alleyway that turned into a hallway that became a forest that ended at a cornfield that looped back to the alleyway. The world folded in on itself like a writhing intestine. I clutched my chest. We're trapped inside the town's death. And then, suddenly, silence. We stumbled into a clearing. It was the same place where we'd first entered McCain, but now instead of trees, there was a wide stone platform, ancient, covered in carvings. The air shimmered with heat, though the sky above had gone pitch black. A single door stood in the center. It didn't belong. It was a wooden house door, modern, red paint chipped at the corners. It pulsed with a low hum, like a heartbeat. Hanging from the knob was a sign, "Exit, but not the way you came." Jules took a shaky breath. "That's it. That has to be it." Mark hesitated. "What if it's another trick?" I stepped forward, hand outstretched. "It might be. But it's something. We can't survive here much longer." The door felt warm to the touch. I opened it. Blinding white light poured out, and for a moment the world vanished in a flash like old film catching fire. Then I was on a street, not just any street, Main Street, Macomb. But something was different. The buildings were fresh, clean. No rot, no fog, no distortion. The sun was out, the sky was a perfect blue, and people bustled around like any normal small town. I spun around. Mark and Jules were beside me, just as dazed. "What the hell?" Mark breathed. Jules pointed to a digital display outside a pharmacy. Date, July 8th, 2047. My knees buckled. Number no. This is after. It was the future. We hadn't escaped. We'd just moved forward. McCamey was alive and well, but not the McCamey we knew. This one was pristine, modern, soulless. Everything felt artificial, like a movie set. No noise out of place, no conversations more than a few words, just a constant buzz of life on repeat. A man passed by, wearing a uniform with a patch, MCK, AME, Development Authority. I grabbed his arm. "Sir, what is this place? What happened here?" He blinked slowly, too slowly. "McCamey is part of a community revitalization initiative. Please enjoy your stay." "Do you know what this town was before?" Another blink. "McCamey has always been here." His pupils dilated, like a glitch. Then he smiled and walked away. "What is this?" Jules asked. "Some kind of future recreation? Did they rebuild it? Or is this part of it still?" We moved through the town square. Everything was perfect. Children laughed too loudly. Dogs barked in unison. The smells were too clean. The shadows never shifted. This wasn't the future. It was a projection. A failsafe. "Look," Mark whispered, pointing, "the community center." We approached slowly, dreading what we'd find. Inside the hall was spotless. New tile floors, potted plants. A receptionist greeted us with a practiced smile. "Welcome to the McCain Heritage Museum. Are you here to view the Legacy of the Lost exhibit?" We nodded numbly. She waved us through. The exhibit was us. Photos on the wall of 3 explorers who vanished in 2025. News clippings about a forbidden town rediscovered decades later. Artifacts labeled with our names, our cameras, our backpacks, even my torn flannel shirt. It was a memorial, to us, except we were still alive. "They wrote our history before we were done living it," Jules whispered. "This town remembers everything, including the future." In the final room was a scale model of McCain, glassy and pristine. Beneath it, engraved in steel, "Those who enter are never lost. They are simply remembered differently." And then we heard it. A whispering in the walls. "We are remembered. We are remembered." Mark turned, face pale. "We didn't escape. We just entered the next version." The receptionist reappeared, face still smiling, but her eyes bled black tears. "You've come home," she said. And the walls began to close in. The walls didn't collapse like a building falling in. They folded in, curled like parchment caught in fire. The receptionist's face flickered, revealing brief flashes of something beneath. Skeletal and wrong, like a creature pretending to be human, barely holding its form together. We ran. Back through the exhibit, past the replica of our final moments. Glass cases labeled, "The Last Footsteps of the Lost Explorers." Our backpacks, our scuffed boots, my broken watch. It was like running through our own grave. Outside, the streets had changed. The clean perfection was unraveling. Streetlights blinked out in sequence. The sky flickered between day and night like a failing signal. The children stopped laughing mid-giggle, frozen like mannequins, their plastic smiles cracked. Jules grabbed my arm. "This place isn't a town, it's a machine." Mark was ahead, yelling, pointing toward the statue in the square. Only now it wasn't a statue of us. It was just one person. Me. Stone cold. Arm raised like I was guiding someone. Eyes carved hollow, mouth mid-scream. A plaque at the bottom read, "The Guide of the Remembered, 2025 to 2047. I stumbled backward. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. Mark was panting. "They chose you." "What do you mean?" Jules looked pale. "Don't you get it? This town feeds on memory, loops it, replays it, controls it. But someone has to anchor it. Someone has to become the keystone." I backed away from them. No, I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to," Jules said, voice trembling. "We walked in. That was the contract." Behind us, the buildings twisted into one another, fractaling outward. The townspeople, if you could call them that, now stood still in every direction, watching. Their faces had split, revealing data like grids beneath their skin. Binary scrawled across their teeth. This was no longer a place, it was a system. McCain wasn't destroyed, it was preserved, curated, and we were its newest addition. I turned to run, but this time the world didn't fold. It opened. A chasm in the street cracked beneath our feet and swallowed us. I landed on metal. The sky above had vanished, replaced by a spinning gyroscopic structure, its rings lined with glowing text in dozens of languages. A dark, humming sphere floated in the center, pulsing, alive. Jules gasped. The memory engine. We were inside the core. Screens flickered to life around us, displaying moments of our journey, walking the woods, entering the town, discovering the bodies. Over and over, every step, every breath catalogued. Mark approached one screen and touched it. It rippled like water. I can feel it. It's reading me. And then a voice, smooth, neutral, both male and female, ancient but artificially calm. The town of Makema has been archived. You are now part of its structure. I screamed at the void. Why? Why us? All data must be indexed. Lives become loops. Memories become fuel. Makema is eternal. Jules dropped to her knees. It's not a ghost town. It's a server farm, a metaphysical vault, designed to store experience. The memory engine throbbed. A beam of light struck my chest. I felt something pull inside me, like it was trying to unravel me into memory. The guide has been chosen. No, I shouted. Let them go. Take me, just me, Jules screamed. Don't you dare. But Mark understood. He met my eyes. We can't all stay here. Someone has to hold the door. My skin burned as the light intensified. Images from my life burst through me like lightning. My childhood bedroom, my mum's voice, the first girl I kissed. The last sunset I remembered seeing before this nightmare. All being extracted, digitized, preserved. I reached out and grabbed Jules's hand. Run. When it opens, don't look back. She was crying now. We're not leaving you. Yes, you are. The engine pulsed. A portal opened, a shimmering doorway back to the edge of the forest. I saw trees, real trees, mist. The outside. Now, I screamed. Mark grabbed Jules. She resisted, but the engine pushed her back with a magnetic force. They vanished through the portal, and it sealed shut behind them. Silence. The screens went black. The voice returned. The guide remains. The cycle continues. Makema is remembered. And the town rebooted. I was on Main Street again. The statue of me was polished. Children laughed. The sun shone. Only now I wasn't just a visitor. I was the town. I saw everything, every loop, every echo, every explorer who would one day stumble in and find 2 new computers or strange movie posters or skeletons in the rec center. I would watch them all. Because I was the keystone now. Epilogue, July 8, 2073. A young woman stepped through the gates of Makam, camera in hand. She was a documentary vlogger chasing small-town legends. Her friend teased her, laughing. But the laughter stopped when they saw the town wasn't abandoned at all. It looked alive. Too alive. And in the square stood a statue of a young man they didn't recognize. One arm raised, eyes carved hollow, mouth mid-scream. She read the plaque aloud. The guide of the remembered. And the wind carried a whisper. We are remembered. We are remembered. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.